Recording.
Hey, everybody. Live viewership will probably be a little sporadic today because we're recording on an off time. I always wonder if people will care, and the answer is probably no. The answer is no.
The answer is always no. People will not care.
The answer is always no. But we're come on, Zoom, stop giving me extra windows. We're
That's
having
porn windows coming up.
Jonny Andrews on today, and he's almost the Jonny I am, but he didn't merit an H. It's Jonny.
Or a B.
Or a B. Or a truant, if you're being particular about it. But anyway, his site is Author Platform Rocket. I mean, he has several sites, but that's the one that we're going to be talking about. And list building through Facebook ads, through a service. But we'll go into that. We'll explain what that means. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. And so welcome to the show. And we've worked with you for a few months now. Well, we've known you for a little while, but we've worked with you for a few months with your site is Author Platform Rocket. And can you describe, I mean, I tried to describe it before and you said list building through ad reads or through ad spend. I got ad read on the brain, but it's way, without the complication, without the instability of knowing what you're going to pay and what you're going to get and all that stuff. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Well, all right. So yeah, Author Platform Rocket. Essentially what we do is we build the author platform. It's exactly what the name says it is, where what we do is we create a specific little giveaway for you and then drive paid traffic to that thing so we can actually target readers who are more likely going to enjoy the kind of stuff that you read, rather than going out and say posting something on like forums or all that other stuff where you can get 100 million people where 3 of them even care or are even literate. We're actually targeting readers in this particular thing. And so that, in a nutshell, is what it is. And then you take these people and you send them messages and just sell them books.
So we've used you some for some stuff that we, of course, as this is a theme already, stuff we can't really tell you what it is, but just we have.
Of course not.
Successfully. And so the basics, but you work in several different genres. That more like you've sort of honed in the specific genres. Can you take us through what those are?
Yeah, well, obviously.
And also, and what you don't too, because I know that there's, clients on a few.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, I'll start with what we don't do. Absolutely don't do children's books. Like, if it's going to be like a kid's picture kind of thing. I love them personally. I have 2 small kids, but the market getting into that thing is so completely different than what we can create a business around that we just don't do children's books. We do young adult. We do new adult and that kind of stuff in things like romance. So we work tons in romance, basically across the board. That's where we started because the first thing we did was paranormal, as you guys know, way back in the day. So we're very good at that. We also do fantasy and we also do sci-fi, and we are getting into the thrillers and the mysteries and whatnot. So all of those genres, we're taking it step by step because what we don't want to do is go hurling into everything and then have a bunch of people like, my face burned off, because that's no good.
There's no nonfiction, right?
Not yet. Not yet in this regard. We actually have an agency program now that we do take nonfiction in, and that's like, in that particular sense, it would be direct to book sales kind of stuff where we take over, first in series or box set. We drive traffic directly to that. But that's actually an application process that you have to go through because not everybody is going to work with that. You need about 4 books to even make it profitable at that point.
And ideally, I imagine something on the back end, right? Because that helps too.
Oh yeah, nonfiction. I mean, even if you have a $20 product, you sell 6 of them, you're you're doing great. It's harder in fiction because unless you're selling like a lion suit or whatever your main character wears, it can be kind of difficult to become profitable early on. And so
what if it's a cookie eating bear suit? Because they didn't write that book.
Oh, that's just left to center. I don't know if that's going to make it. Yeah, no, if you have something, like I saw a Halloween costume the other day that would have been perfect for a friend of mine. It was an inflatable dinosaur. You literally get into a balloon and try to walk around a party. It was amazing. But yeah, we work with romance, sci-fi and fantasy, and then we're getting into the thriller. So probably by the time, next week rolls around, we'll have a pretty healthy presence in there too.
So I know that a lot of people use Facebook ads. That's been a thing lately to sell, either try and directly sell books or to try and do list build campaigns like this. And it's a little bit of like, well, you got to figure out the ad and the targeting, and you got to, there's a lot to kind of figure out, like to tweak them in. And so, I mean, I'm trying to, I know that you, Jonny, would love it if we just kept talking about, just do author platform rocket. It's great. But I'm trying to, for the integrity of the show and all, not just
right,
be like,
content. You want to teach people?
Right, exactly. So, so what are the pitfalls though that people can learn about, like, avoiding pitfalls, and what are the things that you've learned, because you're able to buy in mass, right? So what are some of the do's and don'ts of ads?
Well, I mean, there's a whole lot there, especially I think it doesn't so much begin with pitfalls as it begins with expectations. When you're beginning this stuff, one of the biggest reasons that authors are having trouble getting started, there's really, I mean, they kind of fall into two groups. There's one group that like knocks it out of the park and they have this amazing success early on. And then you have this other group that, they'll dump, say, $500-600 into there. And literally they probably would get more out of it if they just threw it directly in the toilet and flushed. And so you kind of have to understand that when you get going in ads, your expectation should be that almost everything is going to fail before it succeeds. And so you have to test this stuff. You have to test the images. You have to test the targeting. You have to test the placements. And all of these different layers, you have to be very strategic about it when you get in there. So that's one of the biggest, we can, I guess, call that a pitfall, is where your brain is when you start. Most of the time it doesn't work. You have to just kind of, it's like, trying to shape it into a hole or something like that. And finally you'll nail it. And then the second pitfall happens, which is the absolute 100% guaranteed thing, that eventually ads die and you have to start over again. And it's no fun and it stinks. But if you expect that, you could say, okay, my rule is if I go for 5 days and this thing is just like the costs are going up and just everything's on fire, I'm like, okay, kill it. Let's start again. And sort of reboot the program. And so those would be two big ones, I think, that probably take out the most authors.
Yeah, I feel like when you're advertising at any time or doing anything, but especially that for Facebook, you kind of have to know that you're going to fail, because like no campaign is, few campaigns are immediately successful, but even the successful ones aren't optimized. Like you cannot start out optimized. You have to optimize as you go.
Exactly.
So if you're not willing to kind of lose a little bit in the beginning to shape your campaign, that's a hard place to be in, because you're kind of setting yourself up for like major disappointment. And because if it takes 2 weeks to figure it out, and that's a really hard 2 weeks, then like right when you're at the edge of, I could finally do this, is when you give up because you've lost all this money. So it's almost like you can't think of a campaign as day 1, 2, 3, 4. You have to almost think of it as days 0 and then day 1, 2, 3, 4. Like once you have a baseline. Exactly.
And you kind of have to look at it almost over like 7-day spans of time also, because behavior changes day to day, hour to hour, on every platform. It's not just Facebook, it's going to be every place. And so you have to keep that in mind, is if for one day, everything, if you had 3 days, it was amazing, and 1 day where it tanked, you have to play out another couple days. Don't just yank the rug out from under it, because that might just have been a wacky Wednesday or something like that. You don't really know. So you need a better sample set. And so you kind of have to emotionally, I guess you could say, disengage yourself from the act that you're performing right there, just because it can be so emotionally turbulent, because that's, it's one of those things when you see money going down the drain, it's no good. And another big problem is I like to call it comparing apples to hairless cats. It's like, a lot of folks are like, okay, I have a book, now I'm going to send all this traffic to it. All right, if you have one book, don't send paid traffic to it. You need like a series of books, because it almost doesn't matter how cheap you're going to get those clicks, because you're not going to sell enough books to break even on that ad. It just won't happen. What you're looking for is sell-through, or in the people that are playing the page read game, if you have an 1,800 page box set or something like that, you can absolutely become profitable. But it does take some time to do there. So there's 2 ways of doing the ads. There's the lead gen, the email stuff, that's the stuff that we were talking about earlier. But then there's the direct to sale thing, which is way sexier, and that's what everybody wants. But that doesn't work for everybody, because not everybody has
not only doesn't it not work for everybody, doesn't it work for a small minority, because you have major conversion issues there, and you don't have a relationship with the reader.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's cold traffic, and once again, that's why in this we just rolled this particular version out for some people. It's an application only process, because we have to look at who are you, who are your books, what's the situation. If you have 4 reviews, the likelihood that this is going to be a big winner it's way down there. So it can be done. And once again, it takes testing, but it also takes, you have to have the infrastructure and you have to have the groundwork laid in terms of quality books, good reviews, and enough of them with a high enough sell-through rate. So if you have been just driving whatever kind of traffic you have been for say 3 months and you look at your sell-through rate on all of your books, if you're above 60% pretty much across the board, there's a high likelihood that by book 5 you could be very profitable. But if if any of those things break down anywhere along the line, your ability to turn ad spend into profit plummets greatly.
Yeah, so let's take just a second and talk about the difference between cold and warm traffic in case people don't know, right? So cold traffic is you see an ad on Facebook, you've never heard of the author before, you don't know never heard of the book before, you're not a fan of the author, nothing, it's there. The idea that you're totally cold, you have nothing. The idea that you're going to go and purchase this book on impulse is just pretty low. Like the copy has to be just right. You have to be in just the right mood. There's just a lot of elements in the way between you and making that sale. On the other hand, warm traffic is an author you already like. Maybe you've read them before. You see that, or you get an email from an author that you've signed up to be on their list. That's really warm traffic. The warmest traffic is, okay, now you're getting an email from somebody that you've been reading an email from them every single week for the last 6 weeks, and they've been teasing this book, and now the book is finally out. That's super warm traffic. So that's the easiest traffic to sell for, or to sell to. And I think so many authors make the mistake of not understanding how warm to get their traffic. So they don't have traffic issues, they have conversion issues. And so if they just flip that upside down and actually focused on sending the right traffic at the right time, they're going to do way better. But they're afraid to then, spend the time building that relationship. But if you have a Facebook campaign and you send it, you're spending your money to get people on a list who you then communicate with before you sell anything, your results are always going to be better. 100%
true. And that's, we deal with that expectation like all the time. Because we'll have folks that's like, well, with this cold traffic, we're not getting as high as sales. Email will always, that's why BookBub is such a killer thing, because it's an email relationship. And so even though a lot of those people don't know you yet, they're going to trust the source of the send, which happens a lot. And so that's one of the big reasons why if you get a BookBub, it can literally be life-changing for a couple of months. Because it's a way better, more effective way. The issue is that it's slower. It takes a lot longer, like you were saying, you have to, first of all, you have to gather the list. So you have to take what's cold traffic and move them through a process. And that's the way I teach it, I call it a non-financial transaction, where it's you're going to get them to exchange their email for something that you've written, whether it's a short or a first in series or something like that, where they can taste it. They can be like, okay, I like this. This is a good book. I want to know more. And they're going to continue. They self-select then to take that journey with you deeper down the hole. And once they get a couple of levels deep, but this doesn't take 12 years. It just take a couple of days.
You just need a smart autoresponder. You can't throw people into a list and forget about them. That's another thing that a lot of authors, I would say most authors make the mistake of, is even when they get to the point where they understand a list, they don't understand how to communicate to that list. And so that's the relation. I mean, they're dropping the ball on that relationship. If you're not nurturing your list and communicating with them, then your list forgets who you are. And it doesn't take a lot. It's, you could write 6 emails that are just in sequence, and it's set it, forget it. If you have the right autoresponder sequence, that really is a fan machine. It's making them one at a time. You just have to make sure that you stoke it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it works so beautifully too. You just to keep in touch with them for once a week, and you're golden forever. That's all it takes. You don't need to hit them every day. You don't need to, but once a month is too little. Every 2 weeks, that's okay. But if you could do something once a week, and one of the things, Ariel Burns, awesome gal, USA Today bestseller. She's actually helping with the program. I would say she's kind of the lifeblood of this thing. So she's been teaching these courses. And part of what she teaches is how to do MailChimp, which turned out to be shockingly the best solution for authors in terms of price and functionality. And what you could do is she actually teaches how to build these things in here. So you can take people that you're putting on your list and put them into a sequence where they are going to become reviewers, and then how to make sure that they actually review your stuff so that you can then, give them the next book in the series. And so you could do all of these cool things with this group of email dudes that you have. It's not just relationship build, then buy my stuff. It's, hey, do you want to go on this journey? And some people will select 2. Some people just want to hear about the new books. You could set all that stuff up to be automated.
And I would, we would be remiss if we didn't mention our favorite autoresponder guy, Andre Chaperone, and Autoresponder Madness. That's autorespondermadness.net. I just saw Amy give the link. We're going to have Andre on the show actually soon to talk about this. We're actually figuring ours out. So Jonny, from your perspective, what do you think are best practices for, so let me step back a bit. So when you the way that, and just correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, so the way that you guys do it is you collect the emails onto your list, and then you give us an export, which we then import into our program, and then what is the best thing for people to do with, like, either from cold engagement or from re-engagement in that case, to get them from, like, okay, I just got a free thing from you, I entered a contest for you, now you want to make them part of the tribe? I mean, autoresponders, but what, like, more specifically, what do you think people should do?
Well, it's pretty basic. I mean, the first one is always like, hey, thank you so much. You remind them of where they came from, and then you give them the thing that they were promised, whatever that free thing is. And so that's always the first email. The second email should be a couple days later, because obviously not everybody is going to open that or see it or remember. And so what you want to do is send maybe 3 or 4 days later another one. Hey, I just wanted to make sure you got your free book. And maybe in this case, you mentioned the book title name, because maybe that'll jog their memory. You can send that to people who either didn't click the link or didn't open the first email or whatever the situation is. Typically, I would send it to the people that didn't click the link. And that's another reason is you don't, and I am on, because I like to watch how people do this. So I think I might be on close to 150 author emails right now. And it's been, just people out there running these things on their own. And I can tell you the biggest problem authors make is when they send an email with too many stinking links in it, especially when it's first off. A couple of things.
It's called the Dave.
Yo, man, don't send, like, when you say, hi, it's awful. Because you don't know what to do. Don't try to sell them a book in that first email. Just give them the thing that you promised them. Don't tell them your life story. You can drip that out over time. Because if you think about it, if you're meeting someone for the first time in, like, a bar, is it going to be a good conversation if you just dump on, well, my Aunt Gertrude just had this thing removed from her back, And this is really the kind of email that I'm getting all the time. So the first one, just keep it simple. One link, that's it. And then say, hey, listen, if, for whatever reason, if that link doesn't work, I'll send you a new one in a couple of days. Don't worry about it. Or you can hit reply and we can chat. So always give them the opportunity to talk to you. Literally, the email should be like 4 lines. No big deal. Absolutely no big deal. Then the next one is, hey, did you see this? Wanted to make sure you were able to get it. By the way, I have something cool coming up for you next. And this is very Andre Chaperone, but boiled down. So tiny little open loops, get them ready for something that's coming next. And then probably once a week, especially if you have a series, walk them through the series. Ask them questions about the characters, get them thinking about that and get them engaged, and even give little blurbs, but don't just flood them with prose. That's the reason they're going to download the book, is because they want to read that. They don't necessarily want to see that in the email, if that makes sense. So give them like a quick little blurb, just some little sexy snippet, and say, hey, continue the story here, and give them a link that takes them to buy the book. It's really that simple. Just drip that out over time.
Yeah, I also think it's important to note that as with all, your book itself, it should be about the reader and not you. And I think a lot of authors, they don't know what to say. And so, like, what do I say? So they are giving a lot of information that the reader doesn't really care about. And you can get personal with them for sure. But you want to keep it relevant. You want to, if you have a geeky audience, talk about geeky things, but, talk about, Mr. Robot or whatever. If you have a romance audience, talk about things that your romance audience wants to talk about, and insert yourself in those stories when appropriate. It is magical how well placed, if you talk about your family at the right time, that's a thing that really bonds people to you and can have extraordinary power in an email sequence. But it has to be in the right context. It has to be about like, oh, this is important to me. It shaped me this way. Something that people can plug into, not you complaining about your family, unless it's funny. Like Dave could do it. If he wanted to, send an email complaining about the way his wife loads the dishwasher, like that could be pretty funny and it could work. But you just, I don't know, you have to find that sweet spot where you're definitely not complaining and you're definitely not oversharing, but you're telling them things that they care about in a way that only you could deliver that information.
Now, I have a question here. We've talked in the past about length of email, and sometimes our emails are pretty long. And you've told me in the past, they're good because of the story I'm sharing or whatever. Is there a best practice here? Like you should never ever do a long email, or maybe refer to a blog post, like go here if you want to read the rest of the story?
You know what? Honestly, test it. That's the only answer, because everybody's audience is going to be different. There's no perfect answer. If you want to write long emails because that's who you are and that's how you want to communicate, then guess what? You're going to attract the kind of people that like how you communicate in long emails. That's just how it is. So you have to just decide who is your audience, who are you, how do you relate to them, and go forth and deliver. That's, and test the, because I've had people who are like, yeah, I'm not really into this. I don't feel like clicking the link. They'll read the email, they'll get maybe a paragraph in, and it's like, okay, read the rest. Yeah. And they don't click, or they do click, and some people like that. Some people are like, dude, I was totally getting into this. Now you're making me click, and they get all offended. Honestly, it's just like life. There's going to be tons of people that love what you do and tons of people that hate it. You just have to lean more to the dudes that like your stuff.
Yeah, and I would add too, Dave, that it's like, how long is a cereal is that question, right? It's the tone, it's everything. But I think the important thing is to be consistent. I think consistency in length-ish, like if you always write a short email and then all of a sudden you write a really long one, it's important. People are going to pay attention. Wow, this is serious. This author has something to say. Something's on their mind. Or if you always write long and then you write something short, like they're going to really pay attention because it's a pattern interruption. And you want to lean into those. But consistency, as far as this is how I talk to my reader and this is the frequency I talk to my reader, those are the most important things by far.
Yeah, I've stopped paying attention. I'm just like, I'm going to write what I'm going to write, and certain people love it. Now, if we were getting no response, then I would reevaluate it. But
yeah, that's usually a good indicator. Is if you get dead air, then it's like, maybe we should not set that.
People don't like it. So okay, so quality of leads overall from like Facebook conversion. Like how good are these leads? Generally, like it's going to vary by audience. It's going to vary by if people are doing Facebook ads on their own. They may be doing shitty ads. I don't know. But like, what are you seeing in terms of somebody is entering for the giveaway versus how long they stick on the list, that sort of thing?
Obviously between email 1 and 2, you're always going to see some taper off. You're going to get some unsubscribes. You're going to get, it's the way it is, because you're taking cold traffic and making it warm. And so there's always going to be fallout. So that's just to be expected. But after that, we've had a lot of authors who are like, we've been able to double our sales by sending Kevin Tomlinson, he'd been using this thing. He blew up his stuff by, using the email we sent him. So it's been great. In terms of quality, I think Facebook is some of the best traffic that you could get. But you do have to pay for it. That's the game that we're in now, is Facebook has ceased to become, for folks such as ourselves, they're no longer a social media platform. They're a social advertising platform, which is a completely different set of animals. And so you just have to expect that, okay, we go into this thing understanding that we're, for all of our clicks and our engagements, we're going to be investing in that. But the people that we get out of it, very few people have said anything about not getting a really good response from that. So I'm proud of it and happy. Maybe it'll change tomorrow, but so far I think Facebook's some of the best traffic you can get. I know Twitter's not good.
Yeah. Okay. Let me qualify that a little bit, because I think I agree with that, but I think there's a couple of caveats that are important. So Facebook is great traffic if you know how to buy it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people don't know how to buy it. And I also think for us, the reason, it would be great to have somebody on staff who was a media buyer, and we'll get there someday. Like, we're definitely iterating towards that. But right, if a lot of people are using Facebook and they're placing ads and they're figuring it out and they're iterating, like, that may just be where they are in in their career, and that makes sense. But that's all time that you are gambling and you're not writing, and it's one of those instances where it makes sense to pay somebody who knows how to buy media. So rather than figuring out, how do I build these ads? How do I do this? To pay a media buyer who understands is great. So that's step one, which is kind of mitigating that cost. And step two is building campaigns around leads rather than conversions to sales, which is step two. And that's kind of what to bring this back around to Platform Rocket, that's what you're doing. But like the point is, it's always good if you can afford to hire somebody to pay for that traffic. That's going to make sense most of the time compared to doing it yourself. Even though it's more expensive because you have to pay a person to do it, you're paying for their history, you're paying for their ability. Right?
I think it depends on who you're paying and how much you're paying them. I would argue that the trial and error that goes into most people's shenanigans is you're gonna spend more. That's what I think.
That's something that I've seen. It's the I guess you could call it the mechanic conundrum. Do you go to the guy who's the cheapest, or do you go to the person that's consistently fixing your car, so that you don't need to bring it back into the shop 11 million times? I've always felt, and I've really started doing this, is just hire the person that knows what they're doing. And
oh my God, go ahead, Dave.
How long does somebody stay in this to figure out this is going to work for me, or if it's not? Because you don't want somebody losing their ass spending thousands and thousands of dollars and it's just not going to work for them for whatever reason. So where do you figure that out?
Are you talking about
that's what I was just going to ask. Are you talking about people doing it on their own or through a company like Jonny's or anything?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, doing it on your own, that's as much as you can stomach, because you're not paying for a person. I'm very big on the emotional investment, just because I've seen it, raise people up and then crush them down at the same time. So if you can stomach the churn of the learning curve, that's awesome. Super cool. Lots of people do it. The author community is a huge DIY community, so more power to them. If you hire someone, I usually say give it about 3 months. You don't necessarily need that long. In most cases, let's say, for example, in a romance genre, if somebody can't dial it in within the first 30 days, it's probably not going to work. So you could, part ways as friends and that kind of thing. But usually it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to be able to just get all that testing has to get done first. It doesn't matter if you hire someone or if you do it yourself. The equation never changes. You have to test to find out where those little golden nuggets are.
I agree, but I would add that 30 days for any cold traffic funnel should at least break even after 30 days. And then you can optimize it past that. But a cold traffic funnel going from nothing to conversions that you can see an ROI on the horizon, that 30 days is reasonable. If your agency can't hit those numbers, there's a problem with them or there's a problem with your campaign.
Exactly.
And John,
very true.
Have you had situations where it just won't work for somebody?
Oh yeah. No, it's funny. I used to be able to say we have a 100% success rate. Guess what? We worked with too many people now. We no longer have that.
Do you tell them, hey, this isn't going to work for you, or do you say, hey, just keep spending more money?
No. I sort of model my life after not being a spectacular douchebag. So maybe just a moderate one, but I really think that there comes a point with certain people where you're like, this just isn't going to work. The problem we landed into was with an author who was so cross genre that it was unfeasible at the time.
Was it Jonny and Sean?
No. Amazingly enough, but they had amazing covers, and I was like, this looks incredible. But it was the weirdest thing. It was like Christian paranormal romance, and I couldn't figure it out. And we kept trying to get.
Well, because you're fragmenting your psychographics too much.
That was what I thought too, and I love a challenge, but at the end of the day, I just sometimes have to admit defeat. There was one author, as they were coming through, we've implemented a process now where when people come through, we're going to look at them. We have some criteria now. After having done this, we were like, before we're like, I don't know, let's bring them in, come on, And then it worked, and we're like, cool. And then we saw some that were like a little bit not as good, and then we had that one. But then we had one actually just a couple of weeks ago who came through, and I've been speaking to it beforehand, and I made the mistake of not asking qualifying questions because I was distracted. And it turns out that she was a niche within a niche within a niche. And it just was so subgenre that it just was not going to be a good fit. And so we ended up, before we even started, we wrote a very apologetic email. And we're like, I'm sorry, this is just, and here's why, here's how to make it work in the future. But right now we cannot, with good ethics, take your money for this program because it's just not going to end well for you.
Yeah, and that's such a sweet spot too, because for the right subgenre that, there's not too much attention, too much traffic. It's just like the perfect inlet for the river. But
exactly.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting situation too, because we all got a good laugh out of the genre, but it was just something we couldn't immediately work with.
All right, Christine has a question. She says, I know images are important to get attention on ads. What types of images convert well versus what images do poorly?
Oh, good question. And the answer is, who knows? You got to test. It's the worst thing. You never ask an ad man what works best, because if they're going to tell you the truth, it's going to be, because one thing that works for one group is going to work completely different for another group. And, there's always, you can always go out there and Google this stuff, and people are going to tell you, you need to have, a face, specifically a woman looking right at the camera. Don't be too professionally taken, because that's going to, if it's too polished, it's going to turn people off. I don't know. I've thrown stuff at the wall that was, completely professionally done. I've thrown stuff at the wall that was just incredibly weird, like just sort of like almost the thing behind you, Jonny, that, just
weird,
abstract. Yeah, just like, what is this thing? And what is it even doing to my head right now? I'd click that. And so I've done a full range of different stuff, and it's been amazing what's worked, and it's been almost every time something doesn't work, you're like, wow, I really wanted that to happen because that was awesome. But it's not up to you. It's up to the audience and the crowds, and it's amazing what small differences will do in image and copy. But image is probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, image is the biggest, and as far as the number one conversion element on an image, the more human something looks like, especially when you're trying to sell like a book or an opt-in for that kind of thing. A human face in this context is super, super important. And human faces, the number one, animals convert crazy, especially on Facebook, but in this context, that's probably not good. Humans and animals all convert better than just about anything else. But in this context, humans it's going to do better. So let's say you have a sci-fi book.
A kitten.
Clearly this is very true for
a human kitten.
A human kitten, exactly.
This is clearly true for romance. That's why it's about the people. But let's say you have a sci-fi story. Yes, an image of a spaceship could look really, really cool, but it might be even cooler to have an image of like a spaceship in the background and maybe somebody like standing right there looking worried or something, because we tap into that more. And so, that sci-fi story is a little more human than other ones. This is more, it's just persuasion that it's not exactly, it's not as obvious. People go for the obvious with that spaceship, and which is great for a book cover. The opposite is actually true for the actual book cover. On the book cover, you wouldn't want the human face with the spaceship in the background. You would want the spaceship in the background. That sells the adventure. But you're selling the click on Facebook, and that's different. You would want a more human element in the ad copy, in the copy.
Yeah, that's definitely something to test. That's and another weird phenomenon we've seen is the hit or miss it is with even putting the book cover in the ad. I'm a big fan of specifically telling people exactly what they're going to get. So we'll run ads for the book discovery sites, for example, and for a romance one, like Romance Devoured or something. And I will literally spell out, this is exactly what it is. This is what it costs. Click if you want this kind of thing, because that way I know if a person is paying attention and they click that link, they want to buy the thing because they are familiar with the price, they're familiar with what they get. It's already right there. And we've tested the same thing when advertising books, and we've done it in the lead gen, building the email list. We've also done it direct to sale and direct download, read free with Kindle Unlimited, that kind of stuff. And it's really interesting, but more often than not, putting the book cover in the image decreases conversions.
Yeah, Julie told us that with her ads. Do you guys remember that? Yeah, she said for some reason the book cover, I don't know.
It's very, very weird because you would think, hey, it's a book. You're telling people graphically what it is they're getting. And it just
but it's a little too on the nose. That's
what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's a little bit like you're not selling the adventure of it or any. It's just like
right.
Buy this thing.
It's the difference between the spaceship on a book cover and the human. Facebook is a different environment, and I think people really need to. Which is another reason that authors shouldn't necessarily be doing their own ads, because they're not in the headspace of somebody who buys traffic and converts it. It's a different discipline entirely.
I have a thought on why this might be. With the ad, you're asking a question. The click gets you the answer, which is the book cover. If you have the answer already there, then they're not getting anything.
That's an excellent point.
That's great. That's pretty good. I like that. I hadn't thought of it that way. But here's what's also weird is sometimes it works beautifully. It's the strangest thing, because that's why you just have to go into this with zero expectations. You have to take, like, if you're going to do this on your own, just literally wash your brain of any kind of level of expectation whatsoever, and just go in and just start testing. And there was a group of marketers back in the days, they say, test the screams, not the whispers. So if you're going to spend money on tests, you want to test the things that scream, and that's going to be, that image and whatnot. And also the other two styles, you could boost, you know about boosted posts and things like that, right?
Yeah. I don't know the difference really, because I'm ridiculous on these things. And
that's okay. No, it's real basic. It's like, okay, you post something on your page and you're like, wow, that's getting a lot of, really good social engagement without paying for it. At that point, what you can do is say, okay, I'm going to now just, run it up the flagpole, get the iron fist of justice into that thing and start pushing it to the stratosphere, dump a little bit of money in that. So it's a very public thing that people can see right there, but then it's going to show up in other people's news feeds as a sponsored, a sponsored post kind of thing. And there's several ways to do that. The 1200 by 1200 graphic that you could post, like big old square, typically a meme or meme or however I don't even know how to say that word.
Meme.
And thank you. There we go. Now, actually, that did clear up years of confusion for me. But so one way to do this is you can post that, and then in the description, then you put what it is that you're talking about along with some links. It's a better engagement. In fact, you get a warmer click a lot of times by putting that out there, because then people have to actually engage with the material just to find the thing that they need to click. So it's a little bit more of a cognitive thing rather than, oh, I like that picture. And it's almost 80% of the people we get now are on their phones, sliding up and accidentally pressing a little too hard on the screen and opening it up. So instead of an accidental, you have to be very purposeful with what you're doing. So that's another way to maybe think about it. That's called a boosted post. So
here's a little, I don't know if this is relevant to anything you do at all, but it just occurred to me and I'm curious, do you know anything about, add video in ads? Like, have you guys tried that? Is that something?
Running them right now. I actually just bought a bunch of videos that got made. They just recently came out. We're putting them on our news landing page. They're hilarious. They're cartoons. I actually should send it to you. You guys will get a kick out of them. One's 27 seconds long. It's got like an author running on fire. I was so proud of it. I'm like, this is what I want you to do, man. Video can be cool, but once again, it's the same answer as everything else. You've got to do it right. Mm-hmm. You have to test it. You have to know your audience. You can't just take any old video and hurl it onto the interwebs and hope that it does well, because that may or may not actually happen. So you just need to be willing to test those kinds of things.
I saw a video of cats getting brain freezes that I think I really want to use.
Yeah, I would add to the video thing, if you do it well, it could be really great, because getting a tracking pixel on video is actually some of the cheapest traffic you can buy.
Very true.
But it has to be done right. And if you have a shitty trailer and a shitty funnel and you don't know how to buy media, then it's not going to happen. But if you have a great trailer and a solid funnel and an autoresponder set up and you know how to pay for traffic, then running a book trailer to a book, especially not as a conversion to sale, but as a opt-in, could be a great campaign.
Yeah, you could build quite the list like that. In fact, we're moving into that now with more people in the APR program. Just in general, like the ones that we do where we're doing a group buy, we're starting to lean into those kinds of videos by doing not quite a book trailer. It's almost like a genre style book trailer. But then we'll see. I don't have any data on that yet because we haven't gotten videos back. But I'll let you know when I see it.
Okay, well we're in the wrap-up phase, so actually that's a good time. Do you want to talk specifically about author?
Well, I was going to ask one more, and I was going to say final question, and then we'll do this. So this is kind of a big picture question. I asked you a version of it when we were on your show, and I'm just trying to remember how I put it. It's the everybody's doing it, now does it work sort of a thing. So a while ago, nobody was doing Facebook ads through for authors, and it was really, really good. And then it's like everybody jumped in the pool, and I'm hearing from certain quarters that it's not as good anymore because it's like everybody's doing it. So how do you fight that, and how do you feel about that?
Once again, we get back to my quintessential answer. You got to set your expectations up. Yeah, lots of people are jumping in the pool, but it's the same way like with publishing. If you look at the people who are successful with their books, they're out there consistently doing things over the long term. With Facebook ads, the majority of authors are like, oh, this is it. This is the holy grail of all things. This is what's going to make me rich, famous, powerful, and awesome. And so they all jump in. So you get like 99% of these people all beating the crap out of each other down at the bottom rung of the ladder. And they're going to flush themselves out. They typically do within a couple of weeks. And so right now, because everyone's out there doing the webinars and the things and the stuff about Facebook traffic, that's fine. It's cool. The other thing to keep in mind, authors are 10 years late to the game anyway. I've been doing Facebook ads since 2008. So it's like this is advertising. Welcome to it. Like, this is how it is. People, the one thing you can take to the bank in every single case is that the costs are going to go up. Period. It was super cheap. You could get penny clicks back in the day. Not anymore. So the winners of this game are going to be the ones who have the biggest back catalog, the biggest, most responsive email list, who can then send this cold traffic, not just to convert them into emails, but also to directly sell the books because their sell-through is so good. So it's the best writers with the best fans. That's who's going to win. So if you play the game like that, it's irrelevant how all the rest of it does. So it's the
same as anything. It's long-term thinking and putting quality first, and
absolutely,
being patient too.
So I have a question for you, Jonny.
Well, I perked up right away. Very confusing. Okay.
Let's say you have like 20 of the same sort of genre authors that are all coming to you wanting to get the same audience. How? I mean, is that a conflict of interest to you?
They work together to it's good. The more authors you have in this context, the better.
Really? How's that?
It does help because you can, we're able to buy more traffic like that. So there's certain levels of APR where it's a group buy, where we're able to combine the spend of multiple people. So instead of say $3 a day on ads, you end up getting $60 a day spent because we can combine 20 people. So we can give way more power into that kind of thing and be able to fuel them a lot more. Now, when it comes down to conflict of interest, I understand where you're coming from, and I hear it literally constantly, but it's also a scarcity mindset because do you have 5 authors that you like?
Of course.
And there we have it. Exactly. It's like we don't just like one thing. We like multiple things. And so this gives the readers the opportunity to self-select. Not everybody's going to win every reader. That's okay, let's let them, if they come to you and they love you, awesome. Those are the people you focus on. The people that quietly sneak out the back door in the version of an unsubscribe link at the bottom of your email, that's fine. Let them go. It's cool.
No, it's the cost of doing.
I'll encourage that.
Yeah, for sure. And I would also add that I don't have any idea how Jonny's business works, but I would imagine that the more data points you have, the better you can do, the better you can stream.
Well, I was
wait. It's really hard for a single author to adapt quickly because you only know your shit and you don't know what you don't know. Right. But if you have 1,000 data points is actually really small. You need something like 100,000 to really see the patterns and to therefore, optimize the way you're buying traffic. So someone like Jonny, who is dealing with all these authors and has all this data to go for, can optimize campaigns in a way that a single author is never going to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, you do pretty well.
If there was a point of diminishing return, like say you get 500 people that all want to be going for the same market, I mean, is that impossible to deliver results to everybody?
So far we haven't had that problem, but it's a good question. Don't worry, I'll be the guy driving the bus when we get there.
I think it will. Yes, I think
there will come a point.
Absolutely valid, and it is going to happen. So, but that's what happens with all of this. You just have to roll for it and see what's next, and that's the point. It isn't an easy button. Even magical leads for a reasonable price. It is that, but it will change. It will change soon, and there will be something else. And
I like that Jonny didn't name his company Author Facebook Ad Rocket. It's a platform.
Right,
So
exactly.
you have the flexibility to move to something else.
Well, we already have. We're already pulling directly out of Pinterest in ways like currently BookBub's the only one doing it. They absolutely stink at it. So we're in there kind of making a bunch of waves, and so you're going to see the results of that because everything is the way we work. It just in the core program, all the main ecosystems all share the leads with the authors, so that we can then bathe the authors. We call it an eyeball wash. We can hit these guys. So if one ad is ever just like we can't get it to work, we cheat, man. We hit you with email traffic, and it just blows it up, and it's perfect. It's one of those things where we're going to get you the humans. The humans are going to be excited, and it's we're going to do it from email. We're going to do it from Facebook. We're now leveraging into Pinterest, and we're doing buys in different areas. I spend tons of money on Twitter, so but it's one of those things where an individual author is never going to be able to do this because I can spend $1, $3 a lead on Twitter, and I can then share that with people through the ecosystem as a whole, rather than having an author spend $3 for a lead on Twitter. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now the Twitter thing, Twitter's been in the news this week because there's thoughts that they're going to sell like to Disney or somebody like that. How does that change advertising on Twitter?
Hopefully, it makes it better because right now it's a pain in the butt.
All right.
I mean, we got a rep. I spent enough to get one of these guys to call me back, and it was like. And it was amazing. He's like, you're getting clicks cheaper than 98% of the rest of the people because we're promoting content. We're not trying to get you to buy shoes,
Mm-hmm.
So we're promoting a lot of content in this. And so consequently, people are going for it. They're sharing it, liking it, and clicking it, or whatever they do on Twitter. And I just noticed that in Twitter itself, the response rate was terrible. And so he was like, yeah, don't advertise on our platform, advertise in the content network that we are associated with. So it was really this very strange thing where the guy from Twitter is telling me not to advertise in Twitter. Okay. So hopefully if somebody buys them, they already know what they're doing to the extent where they can fix that problem, because I would like to give them more money.
All right, so we'll go back to what Sean was starting to say before. Just tell us a bit about Author Platform Rocket and all that good stuff.
All right. So Author Platform Rocket is the first of its kind media buying company. I like how you said that. I'm going to start using that now. Specifically for fiction authors. What we've been able to do is develop an affordable solution that works directly with the genres that I was mentioning before, so that we could build your platform, meaning we could build that newsletter for you. We could build that email list, and then you can use that to warm them up, turn them into reviewers, to get them to buy books, and to essentially grow your career. That is the core program. The other one that we have is the agency, where we actually now are media buyers for authors. We do all the book submission. We can do BookBub ads. All the different kinds of stuff out there on top of the Facebook traffic and whatnot. So, but like I said, that's more of an application only process, because people have to have a back catalog in order to become profitable. And that one also works with nonfiction. So the core program where we build your list, the one where if you go to, authorplatformrocket.com/live, you can watch my cartoon. That is a great program for authors who are just getting started, or who definitely need to have somebody else running the email newsletter getting program so they can focus on writing books. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right. And
Is there any way people can sign up without watching the webinars? Is there a more direct way, or is that just part of the funnel?
No, actually, the reason we put them on the webinar is because the cartoons weren't ready. Now the cartoons are ready. So
yay!
Yay!
Oh, another reason to love cartoons.
Because Dave was going to steal your bandwidth. I mean, let's just admit it.
All good.
All right. So, and from our perspective, I'll just close with our final mention here that I know I mentioned like a tease, like in our Something Cool, that the Smarter Artist Summit was 50% sold out, and we haven't really announced it yet except to insiders. People who know the details, know the dates, know the speakers. If you went last year, you're one of our, those people. Just make sure if you want to get in, you want to get in relatively soon. When we announce mid-October for everybody else publicly, a lot of them are going to be gone, and also about 30 days after that, the price is going to go up. So just FYI on that. Now, again, if you don't know the dates and stuff yet, don't buy now and not knowing and be blind. Like, that's ridiculous. Wait. But just wanted to put that out there as a little teaser. So anything to add on any of that I'm not getting right, Sean?
Nope.
Okay, we're good. All right, so thank you again to Jonny Andrews for coming on. That's Jonny without an H. And he is at authorplatformrocket.com, and I'm sure other places, but that's what you care about right now. And just thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Y'all have a good time.
Peace
All
out.
right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.